everyone sitting in. Welcome to SAGE Research Methods webinar. It is great to see so many participants in our session today, as I know we're all looking forward to our renowned authors share and the latest resources. SAGE Research Methods webinar is an activity series aimed at helping faculties, students, and researchers learn scientific research methods, facilitating academic exchange and dissemination. We have conducted several sessions regionally in the past years, but this is the first time we have covered the entire APAC region. Once again, welcome all of you today. Kindly note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared after this session. Today's session will be co-hosted by me, Sumitra from Malaysia, and my colleague Candice from China. Now, let me share some housekeeping reminders before we begin. To ensure a smooth and orderly online sharing during the presentation, your mics and cameras will be turned off. If you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the chat box or Q&A section. We will consolidate all questions for speakers to address during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We are giving away 10 compactable laptop stands for 10 lucky online attendees, which will be selected and informed via email after the webinar. At the end of the webinar, we will invite you to provide feedback via a survey, and the related materials of this webinar will be shared to the email address you have provided on the survey. Now, let me introduce the invited speaker, Professor John W. Creswell. John W. Creswell is a professor of family medicine and is a senior research scientist of the Michigan Mixed Methods Program. He's also a renowned author in the field of mixed methods research. He has published numerous articles and 34 books. He's one of the founders of Mixed Methods Research and promoted the development of this area via many academic works and academic activities. Just to go through a quick timeline of some of his outstanding achievements, in 2007, he founded SAGE Journal of Mixed Methods Research. This was the first international academic journal focusing on mixed methods research. In 2014, he was the co-founding president of the Mixed Methods International Research Association. In 2017, he co-authored the American Psychological Association Standards on Qualitative and Mixed Methods Research. In 2018, his book, the fourth edition of Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design, won the 2018 McGuffey Longevity Award from the United States Textbook and Academic Authors Association. It is truly an honor for me to invite him on behalf of SAGE to speak today. Presenting Professor John Creswell.
Let's see.
And can this stop my sharing?
Yes, I'm trying to share here. Okay. There we go. I am here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Let's see. Slideshow. There we go. Okay. My slides are up. Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it's such a delight to be here. So many people have signed up for this webinar. And I'm just thrilled to speak to each and every one of you and to talk with you about research methods and to talk with you about my own personal approach to writing about research methods. This is titled Writing About Research Methods and Expanding Culturally to Asian Countries. So this will be an unusual presentation for me where I'm going to talk a little bit about my books. I always start my presentations acknowledging Dr. Mike Fetters, who passed away last summer, who was my co-founder of the Mixed Methods program at the University of Michigan, a leading mixed methods researcher. He was the editor of the Journal of Mixed Methods Research for 8 years. Just a great friend, a brilliant colleague to work with in the mixed methods field. And I think many of my ideas, innovations in mixed methods really go back to what I learned from Mike Fetters. Well, I always start my presentations with a little bit about myself so that you know who I am. I'm an applied research methodologist. I mean, that's my specialty. It's been my specialty for many years through being a faculty member in educational psychology and now being a senior research scientist in the mixed methods program at the University of Michigan. I have a strong international interest. I was a Fulbright scholar to both South Africa and to Thailand. I'm considered, I think, one of the first founders of the mixed methods approach back between the 1985 and 1990 time period. There were about 9 people from different disciplines in different countries that all came to the same idea of how can we put quantitative and qualitative research together. I also co-founded the Mixed Methods program at Michigan with Dr. Fetters in 2015. So now that program has been operating for about 8 years. It's an excellent training program, and we offer workshops several times during the year, both online and in person at the University of Michigan. And these programs have been very popular, drawing in a large international audience. I'm probably best known as a research methods book writer. I started writing my research methods books in 1994 with my first Sage publication. I live in 2 places, but mostly these days in Japan, Shiya, Japan, which is near Osaka, Japan. And I'm sitting here looking out my window at my Japanese garden where I see the bright red leaves on my Japanese maple tree. And across the street is a large persimmon tree with persimmon orange fruit all over it. So I've got a beautiful place here in Japan. And then in the summers, I live in Honolulu, Hawaii, where I teach a mixed methods course at the University of Hawaii. You can go to my website. We also do consulting services from Osaka, Japan. And you can go to my website and see the consulting services that we provide. You may be interested in my background as a research methodologist and how I've evolved and changed over the years. I really feel that a person needs to renew themselves over a long 40-year career. I started as a quantitative researcher, really in the field of educational leadership and sociology back in the 1970s. By 1985, I was teaching qualitative research at the University of Nebraska. So I added qualitative to my background. By the late 1980s, early 90s, I was writing about research, mixed methods research, and adopted more of a social science perspective. Around 2003, I saw that mixed methods and qualitative research were becoming new and were gaining a lot of interest in the health sciences. So that's when I began working with Michigan in the health science area. And now I think I've added yet another dimension to my work where I'm very interested in Asian research and extending research methods globally, especially mixed methods and qualitative research. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my presentation as I proceed. I actually have 7 books that are very active right now. And I'm going to be talking about my SAGE books today. But generally, my books divide into 3 categories: general research books, research design books. My research design book from SAGE. I have an educational research book from Merrill Education. And then I have 2 qualitative research books that I'll be talking about today: the 30 Essential Skills book and the Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design, the 5 Approaches book. And then I have 2 books from SAGE on mixed methods, an introductory book called a concise mixed methods understanding of research, a concise book. And then I have the more advanced designing and conducting mixed methods book from SAGE that is the more complete. It's a very large book. I need to say also that after writing all of these academic books, I wondered if I could be a literary writer. So this last spring, I put up on Amazon my memoir, which is called Uncovering Grief. And this is really a story about how I became a writer and how I began dealing with the loss of my mother at age 5 and the impact that had on my writing and on my adult life. And so I uncovered my grief by studying my mother's life in this memoir and then learning a lot about myself. So this is unquestionably the most personal book that I've ever written. And if you are interested in the background of an author such as myself, this would be a way to learn about me. So my SAGE books are all part of my family enterprise. You see here on the left, my son, David Creswell, and he's a mindfulness specialist, health psychologist at Carnegie Mellon University and holds a distinguished chair there. And David is a co-author with me on the research design book from SAGE. And then my daughter, Joanna, is a professor of social work at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. And she's a co-author with me on the 30 Essential Skills for the Qualitative Researcher book. And then my wife, Mariko, who's Japanese, has now translated the 30 Essential Skills book into Japanese. And within a short period of time, less than a year, it's gone into a second printing. So here's an attempt to bring kind of international Western qualitative ideas to Japan. And it is in Japanese, and so it reaches out to a Japanese audience. But what I want to talk about here today is really 4 topics. Really a little bit about why I write books. Not that I can really understand myself completely why I write books. Then I want to turn to my 5 SAGE books, talk about each one. I want to then move towards the 2 current projects that I have underway right now and describe both of those, and end with the future of mixed methods in Asia, which is a very strong interest of mine. You know, after all, I'm living in Japan, so I'm part of the Japanese culture. I'm living in Hawaii, so I'm part of the Hawaiian culture. I'm living in 2 very different cultures. So understanding the Pan-Pacific and Asian cultures are very important for me right now. First of all, why do I write books? Well, I know why I started writing research methods books, and my work began when I was about 40 years old, 1985. period, I was concerned about the research methods books that I was reading through my doctoral program and that I was teaching from in my courses were too difficult to learn. The basics of research methods, too detailed. They were long, tedious books. And, research is a fun enterprise to me. So why not write a shorter book that would get to the basic concepts and bring in examples? I wanted to help new researchers, and I felt kind of a simpler way of talking about research methods would be encouraging for people, not to give them a large number of options, but to talk about ways that seem to work for me. I, of course, wanted to help non-English speaking readers where English may not be the first language. And in order to present research methods to individuals from other cultures, I felt that a simpler approach to writing research would be useful. And especially now I want to encourage research methods among the Asian countries. And for example, in September, I was speaking at the Mixed Methods Conference in Beijing, China. And then in October, I was speaking at a major conference in the Philippines. And then in November, I was in first Thailand, speaking at 2 universities. And then I went to Malaysia. And then next week, I'll be speaking again here in Japan. So I'm very curious about how mixed methods is being adopted and used, and how research is being conducted among the Asian countries. A lot of writers that write books can't really explain why they do that. And I'm not sure that I can fully understand why I do that. But if you read my memoir, you'll learn about how through writing, you can express emotions and feelings that you may not be able to verbalize openly. It's the reason why artists paint and musicians develop music scores, and writers write books. So that's a little bit about the background of my thinking of writing the books. I want to turn directly now to my Sage books and talk about 5 of these. All of my books come from my teaching. So I teach a class, and I feel that the current books that are available don't really aren't as helpful as I want them to be, especially from an applied practical example. And so I developed a book. For example, the 30 Essential Skills book really came out of teaching an introductory course in qualitative research. And I looked around at all the different books available, and I felt we need a book that's applied, that tells people really how to do research. So based on my teaching, I have written these books. And in that particular course, I took my notes and then transcribed them into chapters for a book. I've had a chance to work with great editors at Sage. I think some of the best editors in the world have been located at Sage. Deborah Lawton, Leah Fergelstein, who's my current editor. Really, some of the most talented people. I think with my books, I came into research methods at the right time. If you think about the middle of the 1980s, qualitative research was gaining interest as a legitimate approach to research. Quantitative had always been there as an approach. So by putting the 2 together in my research design book, 1994, I think I did something that was needed at that particular time. I kind of pride myself on short, simple books that get right to the major features. I bring in a lot of the studies that I've worked on, and over the years, I've had a chance to work with hundreds and hundreds of doctoral students and master students on their projects. So I have a lot of personal examples. On all of my books now, except the concise introduction to mixed methods research, I have co-authors working with me. And as you've already heard, many of these co-authors are my family members. And I'm on a schedule where I really work on a new edition about every 6 months. I'm working right now on the 5 Approaches Qualitative Inquiry book from Sage, which will be coming out a new edition. So I'm continually working on a new edition. Well, let me turn to each one of these Sage books and kind of give the backstory. At times I've mentioned some of these backstories, but here I put it together on all of my books. This book came out in 1994 as a first edition, and right now it's in a 6th edition. And my son, David Creswell at Carnegie Mellon, is the co-author with me. He has a very strong quantitative background, so he's really helped in that area. And then I bring in the mixed methods and the qualitative background. Well, this research design book. Well, it was my first research methods book. And it started in kind of an unusual way. Again, in the classroom, I had a doctoral proposal class. And in that class, this is the middle 1980s time period, I had students that wanted to do qualitative research and students that wanted to do quantitative research. And so sometimes I would start a session such as, let's learn about a research question and talk about it from a qualitative, and then talk about it from a quantitative perspective. So I was literally going back and forth. And students were asking me, well, which should I do? Which should I use, a qualitative approach or a quantitative approach in my dissertation project? So someone in my class recommended that I take my notes and really put quantitative and qualitative side by side so that a doctoral student could kind of see the difference between the two. So I started writing my chapters for the book and I submitted it to Sage, and I was a new author and they didn't know, should we publish John Creswell? Should we publish John Creswell? Well, I had a good friend who knew the president of Sage, and I went to this friend and I said, would you write a letter saying that John Creswell's book would be a good Sage publication? Well, they agreed. They finally agreed to do this. When it came out in 1994, it became their best-selling book. I don't know. I think there were something like 40,000 or 4,000, a large number of books being published by Sage in 1994. It became their bestseller, which shocked me. I didn't know I had a good book, and it shocked them. And they started using my book in their training programs for several years there following 1994 to make the point, you never know when a book is going to take off. And I had come along at the right time, balancing quantitative and qualitative, putting them by side. By the time I got to, I believe, the 3rd edition, we added in mixed methods. So now that book is quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. It's unquestionably my best-selling book. It's used all over the world. There are many foreign translations of this book. Sage recently told me that 61 of my books of these different editions have been translated into foreign languages. And many of these languages are in the Asian countries So this is really the most important book, especially for a new researcher learning research methods. Well, soon after that, by 1997, I wrote the first edition of this book, Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design. It's currently in its fourth edition, but we're rapidly finishing the edition for the fifth edition. I've added the co-author Cheryl Poth to this book, and she's out of the University of Alberta and a very good qualitative researcher. What I saw when I started working on this book about the mid-1990s was that qualitative research was not just one approach. There were several approaches to qualitative research. If you are familiar with the Guba and Lincoln 1985 naturalistic inquiry book, they really talked about doing case study research. But by the early 1990s, I was seeing separate books on grounded theory, on ethnography, on phenomenology, all coming out from major authors. I wanted to present the major approaches. You could call these modes of inquiry or designs in qualitative research. And I chose for this book narrative, phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, and case studies. I felt that those were the 5 approaches that were most often used by qualitative researchers. And I also had encouragement from Sage, my editor at Sage, to select those 5. Certainly, since that first publication in 1997, there are more qualitative approaches today that could be included. Participatory action research, discourse analysis are a couple that come to mind. But I've stayed with these 5 because I think they are really central to conducting qualitative research. I wrote this with the idea that this would not be an introductory book, more of an intermediate book. After a person learned the basics of qualitative research, then they would move on to these discipline-based analytic approaches such as narrative, phenomenology, grounded theory. But over time, people have started using this book as an introductory book. It has won the McGuffey Award, so I'm very proud of that distinction. So it's an award-winning book, and I would encourage people to think about doing qualitative research, not in a generic theme-based descriptive approach, which many people do, but to use a more analytic interpretive approach from the disciplines such as phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, and so forth. Next, the Mixed Methods book, Designing and Conducting Mixed Methods Research. It came out in the first edition in 2007. Now it's up to the 3rd edition, and within the next year, we'll be working on a 4th edition. I do this with my co-author, Vicki Plano-Clark at the University of Cincinnati. I personally feel that Vicki is probably one of the world's leading mixed methods researchers. When we started this book in 2007, we put it together in the first edition very quickly because at that time, there weren't very many books focused on just mixed methods research, especially in terms of the procedures on how to conduct a mixed methods project. So we wanted a procedural book, a methods book. We wanted to include something about philosophy, but our primary idea was a book on how to actually design and conduct a study. And over the years, with each new edition, we're adding new procedures into this book so that we try to say this is a state-of-the-art book on mixed methods research. It's 490 pages long. It's a very long book, a detailed book. Sage has called it, to me, the industry standard. But, it's been estimated there are something like 300 books on mixed methods research. So it joins this long list of other people writing about mixed methods. I think what Plano Clark and I have done is focused on methods and the procedures. That would be data collection, data analysis, and interpretation, especially designing a mixed methods project. So this is not a book that's strong on philosophy. This is not a book that's strong on ethics. But it's about the procedures of doing a good, rigorous mixed methods project. Well, this is my concise introduction to mixed methods research, now in its second edition. And the first edition came out in 2015. So back in 2014, I was teaching a class at Harvard in the School of Public Health and the School of Medicine. It was a very interesting class. I had faculty from Harvard in my class, and I had graduate students, mostly doctoral students. And it was a short course, so I wanted to introduce them to mixed methods research. And I was bringing in at that time my book with Plano Clark, the big book, for them to read. And several of the participants of class said to me that big book with Plano Clark is just too much to read, too many pages. And, don't you have a simple version of mixed methods? So I really wrote this book in response to the big book to come up with a shorter, more concise discussion to kind of focus on the major concepts in mixed methods research. And so it was definitely a response. And what I did was I took my lecture notes from Harvard, again, an example of my books coming out of my teaching, and I would then write a chapter on each lecture that I gave. Well, this is a short book. I say it can be read by an English-speaking reader in 2 to 3 hours. And my daughter has tried it out and attests to that. It's a short book. I went to Sage and said, we need an inexpensive book. So I know that this book started out, and even today is not very expensive. Because it's short and inexpensive, it's been translated into many languages around the world. And that just absolutely delights me with my global interest in research methods, that people can read about how to do mixed methods research by reading this small mixed methods book. Well, let's turn next to my qualitative book, The 30 Essential Skills for the Qualitative Researcher. The first edition of this came out in 2015, and then my daughter, Joanna Baez, is the co-author with me on this, and we put together a second edition in 2020. Unquestionably, this is the most practical book. It came out of teaching that introductory course in qualitative research, not finding a good book for me to use, taking my notes from each class and turning them into chapters. And I had my graduate assistant sit on the front row in that class, and I had him write down every question that a student asked during and after the lecture. And then I would take those questions and pose answers and put them into the book. So it's practical from that standpoint of including student feedback all the way along in all of the chapters, and in bringing in my own personal examples of how I've done qualitative research. For example, I have interview guide or protocol in this book. So I give you the best example that I've known of how to put together an interview guide for doing a one-on-one interview in qualitative research. I think this book is really aimed at the person who is beginning qualitative research. So as I travel around to the different Asian countries and I give presentations, I recommend looking at this book. I take the reader through the coding process using one of my own examples, a step-by-step procedure on how to code a transcript. I say also, read this introductory book first to establish a foundation for qualitative research, kind of a descriptive thematic approach. And then go to the 5 approaches for a more intermediate discussion of qualitative research. In fact, the very last chapter of this book talks about the 5 approaches as the next step. But learning the foundation, the core ideas of qualitative research is what I hope to accomplish in this book. And bring in, it's unquestionably the most applied book that I have written. Okay, that's a little bit about my 5 Sage books. You can see I've been very lucky. I know my books are being read throughout many of the Asian countries, and I appreciate all the readers. And hopefully, I'm able to present research methods in a way that's understandable to a non-speaking, English-speaking audience, as well as to beginning researchers. I want to talk a little bit now about 2 of my current projects that are underway. The first is what I call a simplified model of mixed methods research. Well, I came up with this idea actually from reading. Those of you that might be in the health sciences are familiar with the journal Implementation Science. And an author by the name of Jeffrey Curran wrote an article a couple of years ago called A Simplified Model of Doing Implementation Science. And I've been studying implementation science as a procedure for several years. But when I read Curran's article, I finally understood what it was. And it got me thinking, why can't I develop a simple way of presenting the core ideas of mixed methods research? And the literature in mixed methods, of course, is very large. So this is a field that's been alive since the 1985-1990 time period, 35 years. So there's an ever-expanding literature base on mixed methods research. And for somebody new starting in mixed methods, I hope a simplified model would kind of introduce them to the key ideas in this extensive literature. I want to reach an international audience, especially an Asian audience, with mixed methods research and encourage mixed methods. New researchers, I felt, could profit from a very simple model of how to conduct mixed methods research. I wanted to include in my model current innovations and procedures. You know, mixed methods is like a fast-moving train, and I feel like I'm running to keep up with it and running to understand all the new changes. In fact, every time Plano Clark and I put together that Designing and Conducting Mixed Methods Research Sage book, we've added in the new procedures that have come along. And, you know, every methodology develops over time, new ideas. So I want to be sure to include current ideas. And I often think about doing research in terms of steps, especially when I get to data collection, data analysis. What are the steps that are involved? So I wanted to put together a simple model that was a process of steps that were connected. And then when I looked at the mixed methods literature recently in the last 5 years or so, or going back even to 2007, I saw that there were new ideas being introduced in mixed methods, but these ideas were in isolation. A definition of mixed methods research, an article on how to do integration in mixed methods research, an article on how to display in a table the integration, a book by Dr. Fetters on meta inferences. But these procedures were not linked together in terms of a process model. So I developed this model. Here goes. 6 steps on how to do mixed methods research. Start with a mixed methods problem where quantitative and qualitative data both are needed in order to understand the problem. Collect both forms of data. Place these databases within a set of procedures, or what we call mixed methods designs. And rather than keeping the two databases and their analysis separate, we need to do both analyses, but then bring them together. A mathematician in South Africa said, mixed methods is like two hands coming together, John. We're going to integrate the two databases. We're going to put these two databases in a table so that we can see them next to each other. And then finally, we're going to analyze what we see in that joint display table and draw some insights. So in a mixed method study, we get insights from what we learn qualitatively. We get insights from what we learn quantitatively. We gain additional insights when we put the two databases together. So if you have a chance to collect both quantitative and qualitative data, you have an opportunity to use mixed methods. And these 6 steps, I think, are the core ideas of doing mixed methods research. And if you understand these, most of the literature written in the field of mixed methods relates to one of these 6 steps. Now, I also frame these, as you see at the bottom here, in terms of theory or conceptual frameworks, philosophy, validity considerations, which really span the entire process. But these 6 steps are the core ideas in how to do mixed methods research. So I want to explain each step just briefly here. I'm not going to go into extensive discussions. I'm writing an article about this now for the Journal of Mixed Methods Research. But the first step is your research problem, or the question you're looking at. Is it best to gather multiple perspectives? And is it best to gather both quantitative and qualitative data to understand these perspectives? So let's gather both forms of data. Now, people differ in how they define these two kinds of data, but I see quantitative as close-ended, where the researcher gives response categories, like poses a question in a questionnaire and gives a response category: strongly agree to strongly disagree. In qualitative data, it's more open-ended. A question is posed, and then the participant forms perspectives about that question. And I've listed here the forms of data that we typically gather under both quantitative and qualitative. And I make my slide presentation available to you so that you can look at this in more detail later. Third step, let's put these two databases within a set of procedures. Well, over the years, there are many design procedures for doing mixed methods research. The 3 core designs that Plano, Clark, and I talk about are convergent design, where you gather both forms of data and merge it in order to really compare the two databases. an explanatory sequential design, where you start by gathering quantitative data and follow up qualitatively to explain the quantitative results in more detail. And then the exploratory sequential design, where you start qualitatively, use that information to then develop or modify quantitative measures that are then tested out. Now, this last design is extremely popular internationally in global research. You know, I say you just can't drop in a Western style depression instrument into Rwanda. No, you've got to talk to people first, gather qualitative data first, and then build a quantitative assessment that makes sense. So exploratory sequential is very popular in health research and global research. Explanatory sequential design, the middle one, is very popular among graduate students, people that are beginning mixed methods research. Convergent design is popular too, but it's a challenging design because you might get two different perspectives from two databases. And if you've been reading the literature, you know we now have gone beyond these core designs to more advanced or complex designs where we put qualitative data into experiments, for example. Now, the next step is integration. What we need to do in our procedures, our design, is to look at where the quantitative and qualitative bump up against each other. I have a bumper car here as an example. For example, this is an explanatory sequential design. We're going to collect quantitative data first, and then collect qualitative data as a follow-up, and then make an interpretation. Well, where do these two databases bump up against each other? Well, it's right here at this point. And I put a red box in my diagrams to show where integration occurs. Basically, what we're doing here is we're analyzing our quantitative data and using that information then to plan our qualitative data collection. So in each one of these designs, integration occurs at a different point, but integration is where the two databases come up against each other. So how do we analyze this integration? I said in a good mixed methods project, we analyze the quantitative data and the qualitative data, keep it separate, but then we need to look across the two databases and come up with an analysis of what that integration can tell us. And we use a table for this, which is the most recent feature. It came along roughly around 2015 in the mixed methods literature. And my colleague, Tim Gutterman at Michigan, was very instrumental in developing this. This table is called a joint display. So we're going to array the two databases together in a table. And these joint displays are going to be different for the convergent design, the exploratory design, the explanatory design. But this is an example of a joint display for convergent design. We're going to put up at the top here our qualitative results. And in this column, we're going to have our quantitative scores. Let's just say the scores are high, medium, and low. We can look at these cells. We can say, okay, how did the high scoring people talk about theme 1? Or how did the low scoring people talk about theme 3? We have put together our quantitative and qualitative data in one table so we can look across the two databases. Now, the last step is how we actually analyze that integration across the two databases. This takes us to the topic of meta inferences. And if you notice here, I'm bringing in the language of research of mixed methods because every methodology has a language. We're going to draw insight. Well, the way I do this is to put another column in my joint display table, look across the rows and columns, identify the insight, and then compare that insight with expectations, theories, literature. So here we have that joint display again. And you see here on the right, I've added a column called meta inferences. And you see I've added a row called meta inferences. Now, we can put into this cell quotes or numbers, but the insight is, what insight do we gain from looking across the databases? For example, I can look across the high scoring people and see how they differed on the 4 themes and draw insight and compare it to the literature, compare it to theory. Or I can look down a column and see how people from the high, medium, and low scoring groups responded to theme 1 in the same way or a different way. And in fact, in Dr. Fetter's book, he says when you do this integration analysis, which is mixed methods analysis, you can look for where there's consistency, continuity between the quantitative and qualitative data, or discontinuity, a difference between the quantitative and qualitative data, or even new insights that can be gained from comparing the 2 databases. So those are the 6 steps. Come up with a problem where you gather both forms of data, collect both forms of data in a mixed methods project, put those 2 forms of data into a design or procedure, look at where the 2 databases connect, integration, do an analysis of that integration through a joint display, and then draw insight from what you learn from that integration in meta inferences. Simple, isn't it? Just 6 steps. These are, I think, the core ideas. Well, let me talk about my second line of interest besides the simplified model, and that is really to expand the use of qualitative and mixed methods research globally. In terms of mixed methods, I've developed 3 phases to this research project. First, how are people using mixed methods in different Asian countries? And then secondly, how are they adapting it to fit local perspectives, traditions, cultures, doing research in a culturally sensitive way? And then finally, how is mixed methods being used to then study the social issues, some of the problems in different Asian countries? This is a project that now we've moved through phase 1. You see, going way back to 2015, I was organizing panels at the Mixed Methods Global Conference on expanding mixed methods. And you can see the 7 countries here that I had on my panel to talk about how mixed methods was being expanded. And then in Japan in 2019, again, I pulled together a panel from China, the Philippines, Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. I work with Professor Hatta and Dr. Fetters to develop this. By 2021, in Japan, we had a global conference on how to expand the reach of mixed methods in Asia. And then a symposium in 2022 at the Mixed Methods Global Conference involving the US, Japan, South America, and Jamaica. And then this last September in Beijing at the University of Peking, the 5th Asian Mixed Methods Regional Conference had speakers from Japan, China, the Philippines, Korea, organized by Professor Chu at the University of Peking, all talking about the use of mixed methods in different Asian countries. And now I'm proposing for this next July at the Mixed Methods Global Conference in Jamaica, a symposium with members from India, Japan, the Philippines, Korea, and China. These panels have all focused on the use of mixed methods research in Asian countries, some of the challenges to conducting mixed methods research in these countries, and some of the developments, the innovations, the procedures, new conferences, new journals, new associations. I was just in the Philippines in October, where they are forming a new association of mixed methods research. That's the first phase. And we know quite a bit about how mixed methods has expanded in the Asian countries and some of the challenges. But the phase two, how are the countries shaping mixed methods to fit and be sensitive to the culture? I'm very curious about that. I'm working now with a researcher from Malaysia who's actually has written a book about how qualitative research needs to adapt to the Malaysian culture. And also what social problems has mixed methods been studying. We have examples in the mixed methods literature, whether it's looking at immigration, looking at the pandemic, looking at the resettlement. Mixed methods is ideally suited for studying complex problems because of its extensive data collection. So what studies have been written in Asian countries that incorporate their cultural perspective and also have an impact on stakeholders, policymakers, decision makers? These two phases are the ones that I'm be working on through the spring and the summer. And again, that global conference this summer. And now, unfortunately, I have India in our mix of countries that are being involved. So what would I recommend for extending mixed methods in Asia? I have learned especially through this fall, presenting in different countries, we need better training in qualitative research if we're going to do mixed methods. Many of the scholars are well trained in quantitative, but their qualitative training is lacking. Last March, from our Osaka office, we put together 3 webinars on the basics of qualitative research. And those were both in English and in Japanese. We need special training in qualitative research. Better international connections between the Asian scholars and people from around the world. Mixed methods now is a worldwide movement with programs, chapters, affiliate groups on every continent. I do think we need to document the impact of mixed methods research, especially on critical problems in different countries, where we can actually study some of these problems and still be culturally sensitive to the needs of the people. We need more translations of English books, and we need books in specific languages. So I just put forward an approach by an author in Malaysia to do a translation of one of my books into the Malaysian language. We need to simplify the methods for how we do research. And in my presentations to the different Asian countries, I start with, here is a simplified model of 6 steps for you to get started in mixed methods research. Well, I hope this has helped a little bit to share what I'm like as a person, what I'm like as a research methods writer, a couple of my current projects that I'm working on. And I hope to answer any questions that you have here following our discussion, our presentations today. So thank you very much. Jamata.
Thank you, Professor Creswell, for the wonderful sharing. Your writing experience and books are valuable resources for young scholars and students to learn methods and conduct their research project. And your interest and insights on the development of mixed methods research are also trends for researchers to explore. You've got a lot of questions coming in soon, so
Good.
I hope you're looking forward to our Q&A session, as everyone else is.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for the insightful sharing. I know some of you have been asking about the materials that Professor has been sharing and also the recording for this webinar. Please fill in your email addresses when we get to the survey part after towards the end of the webinar near the Q&A session. So once you fill in the survey and you fill in your email address, we will be sending you the materials via the email address you have shared to us. Thank you. Now, as we move on to the Sage Shares segment of today's webinar, I would like to invite Mr. Jim Chengpang Kao, an industry veteran with over 20 years of experience in library communication and faculty engagement. Mr. Jim is our regional manager for library field sales at Sage APAC, taking care of the Greater China market. Today, he will be providing a brief insight into the context concerning research methods, emphasizing its support for educators, students, and education professionals in enhancing their research endeavors. These materials offer a comprehensive roadmap for conducting high-quality research. Presenting SAGE's very own Mr. Jim Kao.
Okay, thank you, Sumitra. Can you hear me?
Yes, clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the introductions. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Professor Zhang, for your insights into the simple 6-step modules and your dedication to promoting Asia research methods. This aligns with SAGE missions to shape the diverse future. Because we have a lot of questions in chat box, so I just want to, let me think about it, the time. I want to, in next about 25 to 30 minutes, I will give a short overview about the content related to research methods we published. I will talk about how those content can help teacher, student, or education staff do better on research project. The materials do not just explain ideas, they show the full, they show full the progress for show full support in your research programs. So let's start from this one. Okay, sorry. Okay, let me first introduce our company Sage. We are a top global publisher of academic books, journals, and online database. We also make technologies to help students and researchers find and use a resource. We believe education and research are key for society future. In 1965, when the young lady was only 20 years old, Sarah Miller McKeon started Sage. Here is the photo on the screen. Sarah and her husband George named the company using the first 2 letters of their own names, SA for Sarah and George, GE, which is spelled Sage. So that is how we got our name. From humble beginning over 50 years ago, Sage has grown into a leader of providing knowledge and education worldwide. Personally, I'm so proud to represent this company and show how good we try to do in next slide. In this year, 2023, Sarah McKeon took a significant step. She put her ownership in a special trust fund, not with the investor. So let's help Sage stay focused on helping education instead of just money. Right now, the trustee look at Sage. They make sure we stay independent and keep working toward our mission, building bridge to knowledge. I think this mission guides everything we do at Sage. So we talk about research methods. For more than 50 years, Sage has been a trusted publisher offering diverse content on research methods. This resource supports over 5,000 college courses and attract 2.5 million online search yearly from our researchers. The Sage brand is widely recognized and respected by most faculty and teachers. Let us see Professor Murphy from Temple University praised Sage roles in research methods. He mentioned that we are defining important concepts still used today. Our high-quality content keeps improving this field. We committed to make research education even better for the future generations. Then we move to the next part. As you can see on the screen, Sage offers many research methods products nowadays. I think it doesn't make sense to go through everything on the screen. So I will focus on 3 resources which are popular and highly demanded in our territory, including our standout Sage Research Methods database and videos and Sage Campus. These resources have huge value for your study or research projects, and the library could provide to help about information literacy. The searchable database has over 90,000 pages of methods content. Conventional videos make concept easy to grasp. And Sage Campus provide a course to learn the skill in your research project. These tools will equip you with research skill for life. So let me start with this one, our main product, Sage Research Methods Series, or we call database. These resources are designed to accelerate research for everyone, from beginner to experienced professors. Research is more important across all university departments. Students need to conduct studies to graduate. Faculty need to publish studies to shape their fields. And also the library also need to help the information literacy. Sage Research Methods is there to support every group. The content covering each step of research, from developing question, reviewing literature, project design, and data collection to analysis, and how to writing up your findings and publishing. Our quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods content is unmatched. We simplify research into manageable steps, ensure users don't feel lost. So this product covers every aspect of research for any field and keep updating to support your research or studies. So in Sage Research Methods database, we also have many collections to meet different needs or research for your research, for your teaching, or for your self-learning. We have organized the content in 3 parts. As you can see on the top left are our fundamental collections. That is, we recommend for all kinds of users. Those data or those information could answer your question about research methods. Below those are our multimedia groups, match specific topics. For example, as you can see, if you are interested in doing research online, we have a collection. If you are focused on, you want to do the data visualizations, there's another collections. On the right side, there are 8 Sage Research Methods video collections. These videos can supplement teaching or independent study. User can choose collections to support or reaching or teaching. The variety of content allows the customized choice for different goals or interests. And as you can see, there is 2 highlight. That is what we will publish in 2024. So many questions. So let me start with the fundamental one. The first one is foundations. Our foundation is an intro guide to methods and key thinker. Many experts globally expand terms for qualitative, quantitative, and mixed research. But there is more than definitions. Those texts links to relative ideas. This help you understand the theory as part of a whole system. So what's the benefit? First, the brief descriptions allow quick learner for the new topic. And then seeing connection between the concept expand your perspectives. The threefold previews build core knowledge for more study or field work later. Then move the most essential collection of our database. We call that is books and reference. We also name it our core collections under Sage Research Methods. Sage over more than 1,000 ebooks related to research methods. Actually, these are not only PDF versions of those books. What special is we divide and index the book's content into sections like items, paragraphs, chapters, or entire books based on the methods terms. This helps readers understand one concept from different books and different authors simultaneously. Plus, that is a user-friendly filter function, allow you to go from easy to more complex contents. This way, every user group can find the right resource to answer their own question about research methods. Additionally, we developed some usable platform based on those value content. Okay, let me turn on my laser point here. It's over there. We have Project Planner. You can think of it as a travel guide for your research journey. It takes you through each step of your project, offering brief description, question to consider, checklist, and links to the more detailed contents on the platform. We also have another function called Methods Map. That is the visual guide showing how different methods are connected. Broader or narrower functions help users to find the exact content they need. The last one is reading list. People can create and save the list for resource. This list can be public or private. You can view others' lists, and teachers can customize reference lists for their students. And in this collection, we also want to mention two famous book series from Sage. First, on the left side with the green cover is our quantitative application in the social science series. That is well-known to explain the statistic methods used in research. Written by Asper, this concise book covers specific quantitative approaches, make it easy to apply these methods accurately. This series help integrate quantitative methods into projects across fields like sociology, psychology, political science, and economics, and so on. In conversation with several professors, they highlight these books when they begin their PhD journey. They are highly recommend to use those books as a starting reference. So we give the nickname of this series is Little Green Books. On the contrary, on the right side, Little Blue Books offer the content covering qualitative subjects. Our series on qualitative research methods present the compact guides that simplify the methods topics using accessible language. This volume explores diverse area ranging from discourse analysis, long-term interview, feminist study, to even more complex field works. Both series are highly recommended for the young researcher that you just embark on the new adventures. It will be our recommendations. Then we go to the next collection under the Sage Research Methods. That is my favorite collections, Sage Research Methods case. Those cases share the real stories, how researchers conduct their research. Over 2,700 stories. This case represents the challenge. The most important is the challenge and the success of research across different subjects and methods. For instance, if you are education students, you can find the one professor use, for example, like action research in education field. Each case is written by the researchers themselves. They explain why the researcher choose the methods they did, how they overcome the problems in their research, and then what they may have done differently with their hindsight, the reality of research that you cannot find from the journal article or textbook. They undergo review by Asper and offer the teaching tools such like discussion point, learning materials. This case serves as valuable resource for teaching methods or inspire your students prepare their own research project. Then the next part is SRM dataset. We observe the content from books and reference that we call collection, core collection, to build the knowledge of research methods. Then we learn the the challenge and the difficult and the success from the case to realize how those methods can be applied to the specific subject. And then the natural question arises, do we have a suitable data set to practice in advance? Here, Sage Research Methods dataset step in. It provides more than 500 sets of numbers, scripts, photographs, and other source for both qualitative or quantitative research using. It supports various programming language like SPSS, Python, or if you do the qualitative, you have NVivo. These datasets come from the actual research, but have been improved to be used for learning and teaching. Then we end the first part of Sage Research Methods foundation and core and dataset. Then we move to the next part is Sage videos. Sage videos offer more than hundreds of hours of videos covering research methods and the statistics comprehensively. These videos includes tutorials, real-life examples, expert discussion, and more. They are like a complete course on research methods. Instead of solely reading about the conducting interview or data analysis, a student can watch this video to see the process in action. Teacher also can find it useful to sparkling discussion in the class and the demonstration the various approach. Additionally, this video can be integrated into online learning systems as well. There is total 8 collection, and I just want to highlight 2 video collection that are welcome in our territory. The first one is data science, big data, and digital methods. Okay, it's over here. And which let use master software tools, for example, like Tableau, Python, and R, with step-by-step tutorials and learn how developments in big data and digital methods, which can be applied to the social science. Another one is this one, practical research and academic skills. That one can show how you manage your academic project or research project, write for academic, and how to present your research. So let's two is the collection I want to highlight. Now, let's shift our attention to the resource. It's greatly benefit for young researchers in preparing at every stage of their academic journey. Post-pandemic, online course has become a go-to methods and because the flexible and efficient learning. And Sage Campus is our response to this demand. And probably you have a question, what's the difference or what's Sage Campus apart from the other online course? I think there's a key features we want to share with you. Firstly, we prioritize the practical skills throughout the entire research process. Our product is designed to align with the research progress. Our editorial team focus on bridging the gaps at every academic stage, ensuring researchers acquire essential skills for complete their projects. Sage Campus caters perfectly to demand of research methods, teaching or self-learning in university. It supplements the classroom learning by offering tailored content to help students develop practical skills corresponding to the theory covered in their classes. So we talk about the Sage Campus content pathway. We offer a diverse range of courses covering all academic study stages. There is something for everyone, from undergraduate students enhance the critical thinking to graduate students, they improve in their data literacy or delving into the data science. Even the professor or the researcher aiming to publish in journals, they can find the tailored support here. For instance, okay, let me zoom in more about this part, sorry. In analyzing data, we provide introductory courses that are highly popular, including, for example, like Introduction to R, to Python, We also have intermediate Python skills course for researchers thinking to enhance their data skills. On the right side, in the getting published sections, we guide the learner from choosing a journal to writing a journal article, and finally, understanding about the submission and refining the touches. Throughout this course, experts share their experience around the clock. They offering support from start to the finish. And that is the reason we designed this product. Okay, I quickly introduce the main products of the stage published relative to research methods. In the end of section, I would like to provide a few examples across different scenarios to demonstrate how those various resources can be used and applied to practice the different research methods. In very early stage, when we did, for example, like desk research and literature reviews, we also have various product can support. For example, on the right side, there is many products where we can provide the content relative to this topic. So let me take examples. For example, like on Sage videos, the first one, how to build a literature review. That it will be okay. This is a 3 minutes animations to illustrate how to build a literature reviews. So it will have a quick introduction to including how to have an outline, examine the database, use keyword search, and avoid plagiarism. Sorry. Okay. And then on the second one, we talk about, for example, like we do the course under the Sage campus. We click on conduct a literature review. This one, it provides about 5 hours course for the beginner to learn through the entire process of preparing literature reviews. And selecting, analyzing, and existing literature and struggling and writing a good quality literature reviews. And that is the 6 modules in this course. And of course, you can download the full syllabus to understand the course, the content of the course. And then after you have introduction about the literature review, and then you learn the course from the Sage campus, you probably still have problem. For example, you met a problem when you do this. Then we have the Sage research methods under this here. And there's a very interesting title, say, am I the only one struggling to write a literature review? Under the Sage research methods, we have multimedia contents to provide those topics. Yep, that is Dr. Zina used 10 minutes to explain the struggle they will often met and write a literature when they write a literature review. She also provides a step-by-step guidance on writing a persuasive literature review. They talk about some common challenge. They also how to improve. They also provide details for the learner. Okay. And the next slide is about research design and choosing a math. We also have very much contents that we can offer this content. For example, in the SRM, we start from SRM. The first one is overview of research design and the methods. It is the chapter from a book named Understanding and Evaluating Research, a Critical Guide. And that is what I say. When you do the research on such methods, when you key in the keywords, it will bring all the concept, all the items, all the content relative to the keywords, not only the whole books, but also from the one chapter or one items. In this articles, there is a quick overview for the research designs. On the right side, there is an index of the whole articles. and you can quickly click and go to the place you want to see. And also there is a function called the research methods, methods map that we'll mention it later. Okay, back to the research design and choosing a method. And on video one, I want to highlight this one is doing qualitative research. Actually, we are very proud that video was provided by today's speaker, Professor John Creswell, in the video. And in this video, he mentioned about the qualitative researchers are big picture people. And just like John just shared with us, we think we need to do more training on qualitative research in Asia. Okay, because of time issue, I just stop here. And then if you are interested, you can contact us for the more details. And then go to the next stage is integrity and ethical considerations. We also have much content to support your research. For example, like the first one, international research integrity structure. Sorry. For example, in this, I think that is videos. The lady mentioned some common search ethic violations and how they can be prevented. The international research structures differ from country to country. And they mentioned some resources are available for research to improve their understanding about research ethic and integrity. Sorry. Interesting is some countries has established national system that allow US definitions for research misconduct. So while others have taken a much broader approach, for example, like France, Denmark, and my hometown Taiwan also have developed a national system, are more creative in addressing research integrity issues. Okay. And also, we have videos to talk about the ethic issue in authorship. For example, like this one. Donna is the professor, also the vice provost of research at Texas Women's Universities. She mentioned about the author order and the negotiation about the credit should be discussed earlier and clear as earlier as you can. The senior faculty should create a culture of ethical authorship by providing clear policy, modeling the good practice, and using the tools like authorship agreements. Okay, and then we go to the Sage campus. Of course, we have how to get your data online. This kind of content and course. And because of time, we just bypass this one. And how to in collecting and analyzing data, we also have a lot of various content can provide to you. Just let me take the sample, for example, like Sage Video Big Data. Professor Eric discussed the benefit and the difficulty when using social media platform to get the large amount of social science data. So, for example, she mentioned about the advantage of this approach is the data already exists public. It's easy to, and the cost is so low to get a huge data set. The students are trying to address broader research question and about the populations that previously required expensive surveys. But the problem will also, okay, so it's more, yeah. However, the problem also emerged when making the inference about the people emotion state and attitude based only on their observable social media behavior. So that's the big questions. Okay, then we back to the analysis in data. Okay, so we also have campus course. It identifies the appropriate approach to coding, use the technique to categorize the cruel limits in their details, building the confidence and in every stage of data analysis process. Okay. Of course, we also need to disseminating the results. We also provide a lot of contents that can help you to do this process. And in SRM2, preparing to present at an academic conference, this one. Through a discussion between a research and PhD students, you can realize how to prepare or to present in academic conference. She finds the presentation very struggle to the balance, engage the content for the various audience. So they have a long discussion about this part. And also in Sage video, the second point about reporting research, the Professor Russell described his research into whether a public health program can improve the healthy outcomes for uninsured or underinsured women. That is the way he performed or reported the research. Okay, so all right, I think that is concludes all what I want to present today. Okay, and I hope this presentation has provided a comprehensive understanding about the Sage test methods results we have over. And then let me just pass back to our host, Sumitra.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Thank you for giving us an overview of Sage's publishing and research methods and the most latest resources on methods learning and teaching. And believe among today's attendees, there must be many researchers, lecturers, or students have adopted Professor John's textbook or utilized Sage research method resources, Sage Campus online course, or Sage books or journals. So we look forward to engaging with you further in your learning and teaching experience. For those who haven't tried Sage resources, you can fill in the survey and let us know your interest. And we look forward to being your reliable friend in your learning, teaching, and researching. So we can now start with a Q&A session. Professor John and Jim, please kindly see the questions on the slide. We have collected many questions. It's about 4 pages in total. And the first 3 pages of questions are for Professor Creswell. And as time limit, you can select some of the questions to answer. You don't need to answer all of them. And the final page, we have 3 questions for Jim.
Okay, so how would you like to proceed here? Just go down through, I'd go down through the questions.
Yeah, you can see here 4 questions on this page, and we have more questions here.
Okay.
And there are 11 questions for asking you, and you can select some of the questions to answer. Maybe 1 or 2.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I'll try my best to answer these questions. These look like very good questions, and thanks for sharing your ideas. You know, I always learn when I interact with participants in a conference or a webinar such as this. First, how do Asian research methods differ from other contexts such as the US? So this is what I want to learn about. You know, we don't have much written, especially on Asian countries, about how their research methods would be different. You know, perhaps in Japan, I can speak a little bit about some of the differences. You know, it's very hard to do one-on-one interviews because people are not all that disclosing. So you have to go to alternative methods of data collection. I'm learning from my colleague in Malaysia how qualitative research is being adapted to the Malaysian culture. We certainly need to involve people, communities, participants, in our research and collaborate with them? This is a big question, and I think that we're just now beginning to understand there are some cultural projects have been written about using mixed methods, especially, for example, in New Zealand, and how working with the Maori culture needs to be sensitive to the traditions of the Maori culture. But this is something that I hope to learn more about and write about in the next year or two. What do you think of the challenges for both research methods and also book publishing and academia regarding the explosion of ChatGPT use by both students and educators? Actually, I just finished reviewing today a journal article on ChatGPT and its application in research. I do think that AI has a place in research. I think it can be an aid, but it doesn't replace what we need to do as human beings when we engage in research. For example, the ChatGPT article I looked at today was one comparing ChatGPT's analysis of an interview transcript with a human analysis of the transcript. And the finding was that ChatGPT did a pretty good job describing the themes that also the human researcher described. But in terms of some of the subtle interpretations, that was missing. ChatGPT can be used in putting together a code book, for example, in qualitative research. It could be used in mixed methods research. ChatGPT could be used to review the literature to find out who are writing the most recent books on a topic. And the whole area of literature review, I think, can be enhanced by using ChatGPT. It does have challenges. It doesn't mean that as a researcher, you don't need to look over what ChatGPT comes up with carefully. But I think it can be an aid to the human resource doing research. What do you think are the main challenges in applying mixed methods? Well, here's what I hear. One is that gathering and analyzing both quantitative and qualitative research is very time consuming. And very extensive data collection. There are some ways to shorten that, though. Rapid assessments in qualitative research is being discussed. You don't need to have, you can use national databases for your quantitative research. That's probably the main challenge. And also, I think the reason why I came up with a simplified model was because people see it as a very complex, advanced form of research methods. But I think a simple model can kind of point towards the key components that will get you started in it. I don't think it's necessarily a doctoral level only or a faculty member only type of methodology. I think even undergraduates could use it. I've heard from high schools that are introducing mixed methods at the high school level. And does the duration of study limit the triangulation of both quantitative and qualitative methods in a PhD thesis, particularly? Well, the duration of study could be a convergent design where both quantitative and qualitative are gathered roughly at the same time. In family medicine, where I often work on some projects, these family medical doctors are very busy people when they do research. They can go out to the field and gather data once, and if they can gather quantitative and qualitative at the same time, it's more feasible for them rather than an explanatory design which has two phases over a different period of time. So mixed methods does not need to be a time-consuming data collection process. What's the most difficult challenge you have encountered in completing your books, and how did you cope with that? Oh, what a great question. The challenge. Well, right now, I'm working with all these co-authors on my books, and some of the co-authors are new to doing edited books. So having to discuss with them how to work with Sage, for example, how to work with copy editors, how to do the proofing stage, how to work with the typesetters. These are some of the challenges. Some of my books are shorter. They're easier to put into a new edition. One challenge, of course, is that you get feedback. You know, I've had feedback from as many as 7 or 8 people who have reviewed a current edition of the book and have all suggestions for how to improve the book, which means I have dozens and dozens of pages of comments about how to improve a book. And so you need to develop over time an eye for looking for what I call those gems, those special points that would really help the book develop to the next stage. So sorting through reviewers' comments to a book is very challenging. I would suggest first of all, I would suggest working with Sage. One thing that I've learned over the years is that Sage is such a wonderful publisher to work with because they have offices located all over the world. And that means that their marketing is going to be all over the world for your books. I've worked with 3 university presses as well, but you know, university presses have a much smaller mailing list for marketing their material. Sage has this extensive list, and so choosing your publisher carefully is really important. Number 5, the research methods should be based on the research question. Yes, of course. But how are the principles between research questions and matching research methods determined? Well, in quantitative research, you're interested primarily in looking at the relationship among variables or comparing groups and drawing from a large sample what the trends would be. Qualitative research is exploratory research, where you explore with a small number of people and get a detailed perspective. The way I often think about it is quantitative is the broader trends that you can get, and qualitative is the detail going down into the depth with a few individuals. Mixed methods is putting both of those perspectives together. So if neither quantitative or qualitative is going to give you the best understanding of your problem, then go to mixed methods research, where you gather both forms of data. And yes, the question should drive the methods, but it's also going back and forth. It's not exactly a one-to-one linear relationship here, where one step follows the other. Especially like in qualitative research, you'll start with initial qualitative questions. You'll gather some data, but then you may need to adjust those questions to adjust the sample to best understand the problem you're looking at. What's your opinion on using an open item question survey to strengthen the data together with semi-structured face-to-face in-depth interview observations documents for qualitative case study research. I think in doing qualitative research, of course, you could have some open-ended questions as well as semi-structured, more structured questions. I'm more of the school where qualitative research is more open-ended questions rather than closed-ended questions. In that case, if you have the opportunity to ask some open-ended questions, as well as gather some structured questions, predetermined questions, quantitatively, now you have the opportunity to do mixed methods research. Mixed methods research. Number 7, we would like to know more on modern theory about cultural identity. Could you please share more on this and its benefits? Cultural identity, yes, and cultural sensitivity. Well, you see, that's my new project. And I'm very curious about how, for example, in Malaysia, we need to conduct a qualitative or mixed methods project that's culturally sensitive. How that would differ from how we conduct our project in Japan or in India or in the Philippines. So I'm talking to my colleagues in these different countries to learn more about how we can do a culturally sensitive project. I know here in Japan, my wife is an autism specialist and has been running a program and used mixed methods to evaluate that program. And she put in a very strong qualitative component in order to learn from the parents that had an autistic adult child and use that qualitative to actually shape the types of training that she was doing in that program. So I hope to learn more about this and write about being culturally sensitive, whether it's involving participants in your project, some of the key stakeholders, whether it's being respectful of the people, whether then shifting to new types of data collection that would best fit maybe the oral tradition of the country, to how you actually pose questions to learn from people that are perhaps reluctant to share openly their ideas. So I hope to learn more about how to adapt culturally. An attendee has conducted a phenomenological qualitative study involving one-on-one semi-structured interviews. For triangulation purposes, we plan to do a quantitative study. The question is, how do we determine the required sample size of the quantitative study? Yeah, sample size, both qualitatively and quantitatively, are questions I often get. Your sample for your quantitative needs to be large in terms of size. If you're doing a questionnaire, you could go to a survey methods book where they have a table indicating a formula for what the sample size would be based on the error that you would expect, the confidence interval. If you're doing more of an experiment quantitatively, you could use a power formula for identifying the sample size. For statistical purposes, you need a large sample size to meet the assumptions of the statistic. So if you're going to do a questionnaire, I would say 250, 300 people would be required if you can do that. But the sample size often depends on the people you're studying. I mentioned my wife's study here in Japan in the autism area. She only had 40 participants a year going through the program. And so her sample size quantitatively was small, very small, because of the limitations of the number of participants in the program. Next question. Do we need to integrate theoretical and conceptual frameworks in using mixed methods? Do we need a theory in mixed methods? Yes, of course you could use a theory. And it could be a social science theory. It could be a health science theory. And the important thing that I feel on mixed methods is that once you decide on your design, like an explanatory sequential design, well, where does theory inform your study? And actually make the theory explicit in your diagram of your design. If you noticed those mixed methods designs, I was drawing pictures of them. So you could put a box of what the theory is and how it, for example, informs the initial survey. So integrate your theoretical framework into your design and tell me where you're using that and how you're using it in your mixed method study. Next, what do you think about combining some research inquiries? For example, phenomenology, ethnography, grounded theory. Great question. Great. I say this. If you're new to one of these approaches to qualitative research, start with one and learn how to do it, because you'll need to read research articles using that approach. You'll need to read books using that approach. Start with one. Over time, you could combine them. However, more experienced researchers, typically you see published people using just one of these qualitative approaches, analytic approaches in their project. In order for me to write that book on the 5 approaches, I actually did a study, different studies, one on narrative research, one on phenomenology, one on ethnography, so I could gain some experience in actually doing each one of these designs, qualitative designs. Are there some areas of concern we should take note of? Of course, but and in our 5 approaches book, my book with Cheryl Poth, we talk about some of the challenges in doing each one of these designs. So I would direct your attention to that book. In your perspective, how should a PhD student know when it is the right time to employ a mixed methods approach? Great question. Well, I would use mixed methods, number one, if you have an opportunity to gather both quantitative and qualitative data. Remember, your quantitative doesn't necessarily need to be a big database. It could be a national database, an existing database, secondary quantitative analysis of that database. If you have a chance to gather both quantitative and qualitative data, and you feel that the quantitative relationships need to be explained qualitatively, or the qualitative data does not give you the best picture of a large sample from a population, a bigger picture, then it's time to use mixed methods, I think. In global research, I mentioned that exploratory sequential design is very popular. Well, people cannot bring into instruments into Japan, Western instruments into Japan, and administer them as they exist in the Western way of thinking. you need to explore first, and then modify the Western instruments to fit Japan. So an exploration, if you don't know the questions, you're working with a population that might be somewhat unusual. You're working with a population that has a strong cultural orientation. I think these are reasons to begin thinking about a mixed methods where you start qualitatively and then move to the quantitative phase. Now, as I look back over all of these questions, so many of them have to do with qualitative research.
Yes, thank you, Professor John. Thanks for the elaborate and thorough explanation. And now we have 3 questions for Jim.
Okay. The question is how we apply for the sage research methods resource, or we can pick out the necessary resource and get access online. Okay, you can see that on the screen there is a QR code that we provide a free trial for those resources we mentioned today, except the Sage Campus, because Sage Campus is online course. We have the trial hub to let you know, and you can read all the syllabus to understand the course. So for example, like video we mentioned, and or we talk about a case data set, and even the code collection like books and reference, all are available for trial. And please feel free to scan the QR code and have a trial on us. Okay, what kind of a certification Sage Campus course will provide, which is best used at self-learning or CAS? Yeah, we have the certification Sage Campus is provided by the professor who for example, like the host the course, and then he or she will sign the certifications with Sage brand. That is the certification we have. And which is the best use of it? Self-learning. Okay, both of them are we are recommend to use. Of course, we provide a different function. The whole course is under the previous system we call Blackboard. That is for online course. So if you are a teacher or you are the professor, you can assign your student to join a certain module or certain course you create. Or even you want to self-learning, you can go through our, just like I mentioned just yesterday, just I mentioned just now, because we call the research pathway. You can learn from that pathway from, depends on which, for example, if you are graduate students, you can start from the critical thinking. And if you are experienced professor or researcher, you just want to know a certain topic, you can go to the course directly. So it really depends on your situations. The next one is, can you explain more about writing research on qualitative? I think that is questions for John, is not for me, right?
Well, you know, writing a literature review for a qualitative study really depends on the audience, your field. If you plan to publish it in a journal, whether they would look for a literature review in qualitative, your advisor, what they would recommend. In my qualitative books, I talk about the literature review falling in qualitative in a couple of places. First, well, 3 different ways. One, you can have the literature review to help frame the research problem you're looking at the beginning. Who has looked at this problem? What have they found out? You could have a literature review as a separate section where you summarize all the literature going up to and ending with your proposed study. Or you can even put the literature review towards the end. For example, in a grounded theory study, you develop a theory and then compare it to the literature at the end. So I talk about 3 different placements for a literature review and a qualitative study. And so it's going to vary. There's no one set guideline here, but those are 3 possibilities that I see and have written about. And while I'm talking, you know, these resources from Sage they've expanded so much, and they offer so many opportunities for learning about research. And I really appreciate Sage started as a book area, a book company, and now all these rich resources that are available to help out, including a campus. So very impressive work.
Yeah, thank you, John. Actually, that is our, our mission is we want to build a bridge to the knowledge. So that is our purpose. We want to expand more, especially for in the research methods, this field. We have a lot of supporters from like you, like all the faculties. And I think we believe that we can build more diverse futures, or more for the young generation. We can provide more content or more database for them. That is our purpose.
Yeah, if I have one thought to convey, is that research should be fun, and it's interesting, and it's creative, and it gives you a chance to write out your ideas. And so writing for me has been a big part of my attraction to research over the years.
Yep, thank you. It's very important things for all the researchers.
Thank you, Professor John, and thank you, Jim, for your further sharing and explanation to these questions. And we can feel the enthusiasm of attendees and the desire for further communication. As time limit, we will stop here today. And thank you, Professor John Creswell, again for accepting our invitation and preparing for this wonderful presentation. And thanks to all attendees today. Hope this webinar bring your valuable resources for learning, teaching, and inspire your research in some way. We will stay 3 minutes for those who haven't scanned the QR code and fill in the survey. Then the meeting room will be closed. So have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, and arigato gozaimashita.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay,
Bye
bye-bye.
now.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jim.